the historical fiction company introduces the award-winning book 100 Sweet Promises by Sapir. In the final days of Imperial Russia, a forbidden love blossoms as Romanov Princess Irina falls for her piano teacher, the Persian composer, Nasr Sultan. This is an exquisite true love story in the midst of war of the fate of a princess and the destiny of a famed composer. Presented in the tradition of Tolstoy and Chekhov, the composer's grandson, Sapir writes about the beautiful love story which takes place during the turbulent and transformative times in Russia and Iran. Now available at Amazon and the Historical Fiction Bookshop. Please visit the link in the description.
Welcome to the History Bards podcast today. I'm host Dee Marley, along with my co-host, Michael Zucker. Say hi, Michael.
Hi, everyone.
And he's the author of the Eisenhower Chronicles. And today we are welcoming historical fiction author Alina Rubin to the show. Alina is an IT professional and a mom who, during the pandemic, used the time and energy saved on the commute to write her first 19th century historical adventure about a woman surgeon. Writing is now her passion, and her characters took her on a journey beyond her wildest dreams. Her debut novel, A Girl with a Knife, book one of the Hearts and Sales series, has been hailed by the judges of the Illinois soon-to-be famous author contest, saying her story had an immersive, realistic setting, and they were impressed by the medical and historical research that went into the book. So, Alina, we are so glad to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Good. Well, to start off with, both Michael and I really want to know about you and your journey as a writer, who you are, and why you got into writing historical fiction.
So, as you said, it's been very recent for me to start writing at all and start any kind of writing, including historical fiction. During the pandemic, I started working from home. I had a little more time to watch TV, and I got into watching the historical miniseries. I found that's the most interesting kind of thing there was to watch.
Which one were you watching?
So I was watching a lot of things, but one that especially stood out for me was Hornblower, which is a British miniseries, only like 8 episodes, and it's the Napoleonic War, ships fighting. And there was one character that I really loved, and he was dying. And started kind of envisioning the story going a different way. What if there's a young woman who is a surgeon, has amazing medical skills, and she's saving him?
Oh, that's amazing.
That's kind of how it started. I started coming up with more stories about that young man and that young woman surgeon. And one morning I just kind of had this feeling that I'm supposed to be not just thinking about this, but writing. And
that's
just
awesome.
sat down and started kind of typing away, and I found this is so exciting and fun to write fiction. I never really thought that writing would be fun. I always love to read and to watch movies, but I never really thought about writing before. And
isn't that funny how that happens? Because I'm a huge fan of historical series, television and movies, and I know Michael is too. And it just kind of, as writers, we just kind of do that, don't we? We just all of a sudden, hey, I have this idea, and I know if you're like any of us, ideas are just enormous, like are constantly coming, right?
Yeah, just a little idea like, oh, maybe if she cannot do this, well, maybe she can do this kind of surgery. If she, if this did not exist in the time, well, I can change it like that, just a little bit, it kind of keeps me going. Yes. So that's kind of how it started, but that was only the beginning. I really didn't realize that how accurate the historical fiction has to be at the time, and how much research you have to do to make a good story. So I couple times I had to start over to make it more realistic the time.
That's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So can you tell us more about the book and the series?
Sure, absolutely. So when kind of I sent some feedback to beta readers, people pointed out, well, you have to have a good story for your main character. How could she be a surgeon at the time when women could not go to medical school? And that was kind of a great feedback. And I realized that, well, one thing she could have done is maybe disguise herself as a man to go to medical school. And I thought, well, that would be an interesting story right away. And I kind of started, that's kind of, it was my time to start over. And, now by that time I've learned some things about writing, about researching. So I started coming up with her stories in medical school as she's disguised as a young man and studying. And that's really what my first book, A Girl with a Knife, is all about.
Okay.
So that's her story in medical school. And now I have a second book coming out, this sequel called No Job for a Woman, coming out this weekend. And that's
awesome.
she is going to be a ship surgeon. So now after graduating and getting her skills, I'm kind of getting closer to the original stories that I was coming up with. Now she's going to go on a ship, but at the time, men were not very the sailors were not very welcoming of women on their ship. Bring bad luck,
They did not bring good luck.
Yeah, or even officers just felt like she could be a distraction, why the woman, wants to be in the sick bay trying to, help the sick and the wounded. So that's the story of the second book, her trying to win respect of the sailors on the ship.
Well, that just sounds really amazing. And congratulations on your release this weekend. So, Michael, you got anything that you want to ask?
So did you travel to the locations where your book takes place?
I did not. I've never been to England. That's where, it's often I have, put the action in a small town. Sometimes I don't even name it. Kind of just use my imagination. My editor is British, so she sometimes helps me to make sure that, I use authentic language or
that helps.
Cultural things. But yeah, I've never been to England or haven't done much sailing either.
Well, I'm sure that's on your bucket list now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let me ask you this: in doing your research for the book, did you find anything, or can you tell us more about the research you did and maybe something obscure that you found in your research?
Well, 19th century medicine is very interesting and obscure. Yes. So no anesthesia, no antibiotics, and really before 1940s, people didn't know they're supposed to wash their hands. Even doctors. So surgery was very gruesome and a lot of people caught infections. And, I was reading about all that and putting that in my stories. But I think what really was hitting me sometimes is I would try to imagine a scene. Ella is examining a patient. So what does she have? Does she have a stethoscope? Does she have a thermometer? I had to look up when those things were invented. Sometimes I would find a really interesting story, like the obstetrical forceps, used to deliver babies. They were invented at the time they were used, but only by this family called the Chamberlain family. They invented this device, and so to deliver babies, they would blindfold the mother and make everybody leave the room. So only they would know how they delivered this baby, and so no other doctors would know their secret.
Wow.
To profit. Yeah, so they wanted to, they were really thinking about profits more than saving all the patients they could.
Are you going to have that in any of your books?
It does come up in the second book, because even when the secret was discovered, even when other doctors started using forceps, they would not let midwives use the forceps. They thought midwives, even though women, were delivering babies for centuries, they said, no, women cannot learn how to use this device. So only if there's a difficult birth, you have to go get a male doctor. So that kind of thing just came up in my second book.
That's really fascinating. Did you ever watch Call the Midwife?
I watched a few episodes. Yeah,
a few episodes.
I was thinking of series, that, but some of it, yeah.
Because that reminded me of the same time period, or I guess it's the same time period. It may be a little
earlier, much earlier.
Yours is earlier, yeah.
Yeah, early 19th century, I think.
Right.
midwife somewhere mid-20th century.
Right, that's right. But it made me think of that when you brought that up. Well, that's really fascinating. I can't. I love obscure things, tidbits that come into novels like that. And as you know, as historical fiction authors, we have the huge ability to be able to teach something to somebody, that they may have not known before so it's kind of fun. You get to combine both. You're teaching and writing at the same time. It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
So
one of the things I love about genre, especially reading other authors too, just how much you can learn. And right, I've seen, maybe just a small scene, Ella dancing with somebody. Well, what dance can she dance in the early 19th century? What was appropriate? What was, how did somebody invite somebody to a dance? Different. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really fascinating.
A lot of research and just fascinating.
That's great. That's great. So, Michael, do you have anything?
Miss Rubin, do you have a favorite either quote or passage from the book? Like a certain moment that stands out the most?
Okay, maybe a little bit from my second book. I prepared something. So this is one of my favorite characters, Matilda. She kind of mentors Ella. She's a midwife herself, and so she says before Ella, when Ella tells her that she wants to go to the ship, she says, "Fitting in is painful. People should be where they belong." So I kind of like that because the way she says it, it's like Ella takes it as a negative. You don't want me to go, but it actually kind of true. Always trying to fit in. That's not a good way to live. And
right.
Belonging, is where you're accepted for who you are is really the right way to, to get along with people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's really fascinating. And to me, it's always like whenever an author chooses the quote that they really like of their own writing, it also tells something about you as a writer. That and as a person that really stood out to you.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
I feel it's kind of the main lesson of the second book is Ella always tries to fit in, to be like other people. So if she's gonna be a sailor, she feels like she has to talk like them, she has to act like them, but she could also, her really strength is to be herself.
To be yourself, right? Well, let me ask you this. So, since we have a lot of younger writers who are just starting out, what advice would you give your younger self? Which is also would be advice for somebody starting out in historical fiction.
I would say just take criticism well. Beta readers will give you a lot of advice, and sometimes it's not easy to take. When I get my manuscript back from the editor, it's all
yeah.
And she wants me to change this and add a new scene, and but it's in the end it makes the book better. So
right. Be
prepared for all that and take it in stride.
I think that's great advice, and it's something that we all had to learn because I remember starting out too, and it was like I had a literary agent that told me something that really threw me for a loop, and I didn't take it well. And but I had to learn, and that's what we all have to do as writers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you for joining the History Bards podcast. Stay tuned for more from Alina Rubin as we take a break for our sponsors.
The historical fiction company featured spotlight book, The Founding, by Michael Ross. 2 men, 2 dreams, 2 new towns on the plains, and a railroad that will determine whether the towns, one black, one white, live or die. Will Crump has survived the Civil War, Red Cloud's War, and the loss of his love, but the search for peace and belonging still eludes him. From Colorado, famed Texas Ranger Charlie Goodnight lures Will to Texas, where he finds new love, but can a Civil War sharpshooter and a Quaker find a compromise to let their love survive? When Will has a chance to join in the founding of a new town, he risks everything, his savings, his family, and his life, but it will all be for nothing if the new railroad passes them by. Luther has escaped slavery in Kentucky through Albania, Will's sister, only to find prejudice rearing its ugly head in Indiana. When the black codes are passed, he's forced to leave and begin a new odyssey. Where can he and his family go to be truly free? Can they start a town owned by blacks, run by blacks, with no one to answer to. But their success will be dependent on the almighty railroad and overcoming bigotry to prove their town deserves the chance to thrive. Will's eldest sister, Julia, and her husband, Hiram, are watching the demise of their steamboat business and jump into railroads, but there's a long black shadow in the form of Jay Gould, the robber baron who ruthlessly swallows any business he considers competition. Can Julia fight the rules against women in business, dodge Gould, and hold her marriage together? The Founding tells the little-known story of the Exodus Usters and Nicodemus, the black town on the plains of Kansas, and the parallel story of Will's founding of Lubbock, Texas, against the background of railroad expansion in America. A family reunited, new love discovered, the quest for freedom, the rise of two towns. In the end, can they reach across the Great Divide? The Founding is the exciting conclusion to the series. Michael Ross's book, The Founding, Across the Great Divide, is now available on Amazon or at the Historical Fiction Company bookshop. Get yours today by clicking on the link in the podcast description. And now, we return you to Alina Rubin's interview at the History Bards podcast.
Michael?
I guess one thing I've been thinking about as we've been discussing, I guess, this character and the arc that you have her going on through these books is how did you come up with, I guess, not just the arc, but like the character's voice, and how do you embody that voice through the books?
I feel her. I can hear her talking in my head, just like her and most other characters. And that's why sometimes my secondary characters often surprise me. Like, I thought that somebody will be just there for a scene, and somehow this person becomes central to the whole book, just because I hear their voice and suddenly their story becomes more clear. So I feel like Ella is talking to me, and that's how I write her. I just try to imagine her saying, when I really love writing dialogue, and I imagine her saying, those things that I write.
I'm fond of dialogue writing too. That's probably one of my favorite modes of storytelling. But I guess one thing you said in there was that you were surprised at this size of a role that like a side character can play in a book. I guess that leads me to ask, so when you're writing either the first or second novel, and I don't know if this has evolved over the course of your career so far, do you plan the story out in advance, or does it sort of come to you as you go along with your first draft?
So I plot like bullet points, so not a huge plan. But I do think through it from the beginning to end and write bullet points. And then I'm a big fan of Save the Cat Blueprint. So I've read that book. I took the class for Save the Cat, and so I put together that blueprint. So go through the 15 beats there and put the what would happen at each beat. So because that also strengthens the story, and maybe I have the bullets that all this action will happen, but the blueprint will help me kind of spread the action out in into a nice space. And then I start writing, and I never know what happens. Usually I will hit all the bullet points, but kind of the things in between that will, small things that really do become important and significant, that's where kind of the magic happens.
That's awesome. That's awesome, because I think we all have our little book Bibles next to us that our little On Writing. That's mine. On Writing by Stephen King is one of my absolute favorite.
Oh, I love that one too. Yeah.
I think everybody loves that book. And I love Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. That's another one that I really love. So that one that you recommended, maybe you could send that to me. We could put that in the description link. If anybody's interested in getting that one, we can do that along with your books as well. So I really would love to know, and you said something about that you started this during the pandemic. So is that what got you on the road to becoming a writer?
I think so. I think if I were commuting to the office, I probably would not be writing, because it takes so much. It always took so much out of me, and I didn't realize until I started staying home that now I have a lot more energy and I have a little more time. But I set my routine to write like early in the morning. So I get up 5 a.m. My daughter gets to sleep till 7 a.m. So this is my window to write
great.
before I have to get her up to school.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really great. Well, Michael, anything?
Can we talk about like other influences? I know you said there was a mini series that helped to inspire, but like what other either works of historical fiction or just storytelling generally do you think you either absorbed or specifically looked at as sort of models, role models, inspirations, things like that?
Like I loved historical fiction since I was a kid. I grew up in Soviet Union. Our favorite books were by Alexander Dumas, by Jules Verne. That was kind of our escape, even as 10-year-old kids. So that's
Awesome.
the books we read and discussed. And it seems a little unusual. Like my daughter, she reads Harry Potter, and I have not seen her read too much historical fiction in school yet. But that's what we read, and I think that's what kind of like this kind of stories of journeys of somebody being very brave. That's what I always enjoyed. But I always felt like, but why are there so few women? How come the women have such small parts in these books? I always wanted to kind of, even I think as a 10-year-old kid, I would like sometimes imagine a character who is kind of, a strong woman who is helping everybody. Things like that. And now my favorite writers, I love Philippa Gregory, Tracy Chevalier, Amy Harmon. I read a lot of historical fiction by them. And also I learn a lot by beta reading and ARC reading with other historical fiction authors.
Which is good. That's a great support. If you find a little group like that you can have a support system, that's wonderful. So do you have like an ultimate favorite historical novel that you really like, maybe classic, or it doesn't have to be classic, but
probably Count of Monte Cristo.
Of course. Of course. That's one of my favorites too. That's awesome. Well, let me ask you this. Do you this is kind of a fun question. I thought I'd just kind of throw in there. What if you could be a book? What book would it be, and why? Tell us why that would be your choice.
I think it may be Cinderella. I remember when I was a kid, my mom would always say that how quickly I can transform myself, like from kind of being just kind of, if I'm going somewhere, how I could look so messy, and suddenly, if I feel like, being like glamorous or something, if it's a special day or something, how I can quickly transform myself. And I feel it not only applies to how I would look at the time, but also like maybe like stepping into something new, like stepping into being an author. Like I really didn't feel like it's a big transition. People always talk about imposter syndrome. Like I have no trouble, saying I'm an author. I wrote some books. I enjoy telling people about that, and I don't feel like it's something I don't want should hide or
Right.
So that's kind of how I introduce myself now.
I think that's awesome. Well, I love that question now. So, Michael, do you have anything?
Well, we talked about what's your favorite quote from your book. What about favorite quotes either from other books or just quotes of advice, kind of like a mantra, something that kind of helps drive you forward, both when writing and marketing and everything with regards to this career?
I was gonna go for something about feedback, but we kind of talked about that. There's one line I remember, but I have to kind of translate it because it's from Russian. It said Moscow was not built at once. It's kind of basically the idea is, and there probably is an equivalent saying in English too, but like it's step by step. A lot of things you have to build. One thing at a time, and later you look back, it's like, wow, I wrote this whole book, but it starts with chapter by chapter, sentence by sentence, research, a little research here, a little, something you learned somewhere else.
Well, I think that's a great quote to live by. Well, let me ask you this. So you mentioned that you have a new book coming out this weekend. So can you tell us more about that, or maybe any events, or maybe what else you're working on for the future?
Okay, sure. So I'm gonna have kind of a Facebook launch show on Sunday. That's when officially my book launch. I have so the award that I won that's coming up later in April. There's going to be a celebration at my local library, so I'm very excited about that. And what I'm working on right now is kind of a short prequel about Ella when she's only 12 years old. And I'm hoping to finish that pretty soon. And then I wanted to kind of be a free book, so for people to kind of to enjoy and get to know my series before they commit to buying other books.
Well, that sounds really great. Michael, you got anything to add?
Is one interesting thought, I guess, is we talk a lot about writing, but how have you approached the marketing process, for younger historical fiction writers or writers who are trying to learn the field? How have you approached that side of the business?
So I research marketing just like I research anything else. There are books about marketing. I think one important thing is to know who your readers are. I thought because my character is 15 that it's going to be 15-year-olds reading this book. It turns out that it's usually women my age or a little older who are like my best readers, who are the ones who can respond the most to, and maybe write me emails or messages. So, and once I know that, I look where people that those readers would be looking for something to read. So if it's older readers, they're on Facebook. If it's younger readers, they may be on TikTok. So look for your readers and make your books easily available to them there. So let them know what they're about. And there's just a lot to marketing. There are ads, there are conventions. Basically, I think that's something I learn all the time. And whenever I pick something new, I try it out.
Oh, that's great. So are you on TikTok?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah,
I understand.
More on Facebook.
I understand. Well, this has been really great, and we were so excited for we really appreciate you being here today, and we're excited for your books, and we wish you so much success on the launch. And for those of you that are listening in, for more information on Alina's books, you can click in the link in the description, or you can go to her website at alinarubinauthor.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, as next week's episode features author Sarah V. Barnes, who writes about ancient history. We thank you so much to our listeners and viewers. This is Dee Marley and
Michael Zucker.
And we ask you to keep making history and keep listening.